I wanted to begin from a kind of historical perspective. You and I were at the funeral of your uncle.
Oh yeah, on Saturday.
Probably like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. A lot. Yeah.
No,
a week ago.
Right, that's right. Yeah, and I don't know. It didn't dawn on me. I always knew because I remember one time when we were over here for the Cacique, practicing for the Cacique Awards, and we stopped by
my aunt's house and Granny's house.
And so it registered to me that there was some connection, but I didn't realize until a couple of weeks ago that
she was my aunt.
Yeah, and the whole connection of the whole family.
Yeah.
Because it is in a sense a musical family.
Yeah. You could say that.
Yeah, a very musical family.
In that house, in my aunt's house, you have Darnell, Pat, and Granny.
Yeah.
Who play piano.
Right.
Three of them, yeah.
And she's still playing piano.
And the older sister, who's now deceased, Norma, she also played piano. As a matter of fact, when we were kids, that's how we learned all of the show tunes of that era.
Oh, yeah.
Because she would play them and we'd sing them. Oklahoma and South Pacific. You know, we knew those shows inside out.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the music for those shows. Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I guess most notable, I guess, would be the story of your uncle,
Freddie.
Uh-huh.
You mean my connection with him, my earliest connection with him? Well, actually, I started clarinet lessons with my uncle when I was about 14 going on 15, I guess, thereabout. And that was actually my earliest introduction to music.
Okay.
And I had about, all total, I think I had about maybe 6 lessons on the clarinet. And then I told him I wanted to switch from the clarinet to the saxophone, and the reason for that was all the pictures I'd ever seen of saxophone players, it just simply looked more glamorous than the clarinet players, you know. And there seemed to be more saxophone players at the time than there were clarinet players, even though I knew who some of the clarinet players were. Yeah. You know, the Benny Goodmans, Artie Shores, and these people, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how long into, I guess, taking formal lessons were you actually playing?
Well, actually I switched, like I said, after about 6 lessons on the clarinet, and I switched to the saxophone, which was an alto saxophone, and I told him I preferred that. Then I had a few lessons from him on the saxophone, again, probably maybe, I don't know, 6 or 7 of those lessons. And I took the instrument, was able to take the instrument home with me, you know, so a lot of what I was able to do as far as the fundamental aspect was concerned, I actually got from him, and then I just simply, you know, developed that.
Okay.
And to make a long story short, I practiced pretty much by myself for most of 2 years in my house on Royal Avenue upstairs there.
And is that what led you into playing
with the band?
The band?
Well, yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
I had been playing by this time for about maybe 2.5, probably even close to 3 years. I had some idea how the instrument was held, what produced the sound and all that sort of thing. Yes, I had that down.
Okay.
And my uncle actually invited me to sit in with the band as a kind of understudy on the third alto chair, you know, which I did. And while I was with the band, I took a few lessons from Tommy McCook, who was the tenor player with the band. Tommy McCook was a very good tenor player from Jamaica.
Okay.
I had some lessons with Tommy. Here again, is nothing sustainable. Most of the coaching and teaching that that I had in the earlier years was sort of sparse. You know what I mean? I think the longest period of time I actually had a tutor was a summer I spent with Professor Charlie Cox from the Florida A&M University. You know, I also had I studied with Hubert for one summer also. Hubert Laws, yeah, great, one of the world's greatest flute players, both in classical and jazz and anything else. All those Aretha Franklin albums that you hear, you know, he's on all of those, and I mean, singers just too numerous to mention, man, you know. And I studied with him, but I didn't study instrument. I studied theory. Theory with him.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, and if I was smart then, I would have taken some flute lessons. But I mean, flute came later. I basically picked up the flute on my own.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think the only flute lesson I ever had in my life, I got it from Harold McNair, Little G, you know, who was one of the finest tenor players to come out of Jamaica. I mean, he was like, he rose the bar quite high, you know, when he came here. Yeah.
Your uncle played?
My uncle played clarinet and tenor saxophone.
Oh, okay.
And I remember as a young boy, I must have been, maybe 8, 9, thereabout, and spending weekends with my aunt through McCullough Corner. The Silver Slipper was just out on East Street, and with the windows open at night, you could hear the music all over the entire neighborhood. You know, all of the entire East Street south of the hill, you know, benefited from the Silver Slipper band. Yeah, but I remember the tenor battles, as they were, that my uncle and McNair used to have.
Oh, yeah.
You know, yeah. McNair was quite a player. He was a good player.
So, in your development, the early development, who did you listen to a lot?
Well, I think my earliest influence, because I was playing alto at the time, would have been Charlie Parker, Cannonball, Sonny Stitt, those names. And of course, later on, I played tenor also. You know what I mean? So I suppose I developed the transition from the alto to the tenor wasn't really all that difficult for me. You know, I thought I had this sort of innate ability to develop a sound on both the instruments, you know, that was acceptable. You know what I mean? I don't know how good it was, but some people say, yeah, it's a good sound. But I remember Professor Cox, he commented one time, he said, I had one of the best alto sounds that he'd heard around anywhere, you know, even back then. Because of the projection, the way the instrument projected, you know.
That's something I'm going to ask you a little bit later about the projection on the horn. Actually, my first experience, like I told you on Sunday, was with you playing tenor.
Tenor, right?
When we were rehearsing for the Casino Awards kind of thing. And to hear you play alto is my heart is with tenor.
Well, actually, the way that came about, the tenor playing, was that in 1971, I think it was. Right, I auditioned for the cabaret show band over at Paradise Island, which was at the time Don Reagan's band. And as you probably know, when they opened with all expatriate a bunch of musicians. They were all from Vegas, and the guys' contracts were for a couple months at a time. And some of them liked it, some of them didn't like it, and those who liked it stayed, you know. And then the call went out for local musicians, you know, and that's what gave me the opportunity to play with that band along with Apple Elliott, deceased, my good friend, and Frank Scully, who was a local drummer, you know, and anybody who knows him knows that he was an excellent drummer. I mean, you know, I don't know whether Neil and those know him or not, but he now lives in England. He's still playing, because I get emails from him all the time, you know, yeah. So we were the first, and Dennis Donaldson, we were the first 4 local musicians to join that band in Paradise Island. And we stayed until the band was displaced, you know. Well, I was hoping I'd be as diplomatic as I could, but I ain't gonna be diplomatic. It was politics that caused the band, you know.
Really?
They brought in a band that had absolutely no experience whatsoever, none at all, at all, at
A
all.
local band? Or?
A local band, yeah. They brought those guys in, and this was like new territory for them, someplace they'd never been, never even hoped to be either. I thought it was probably not a smart thing to do, because I don't think it was benefiting those musicians who didn't have the experience.
Right.
I thought, like Apple did at the time, that what they should have done was to bring these guys, the ones that were capable enough, right, into the band as understudies,
Right.
and eventually phase out
Right.
those expatriate musicians, but they didn't do that. Lock, stock, and barrel, y'all out of here. So that's all that.
But now we're kind of facing another kind of dilemma with the whole music industry in the Bahamas.
Well, that's one that continues to frustrate me, like all of the unemployed musicians, and even some of those that are employed.
Yeah.
From my perspective anyway, I simply believe that part of what has happened to the music scene in this country is this. I think it's a shared blame. You have to blame the musicians,
Yeah.
and you also have to blame the government, right? Who I suppose lacked the foresight. I don't think they were involved enough or even cared enough, to not allow this thing to happen. I think we reached a fork in the road where we made the wrong turn and actually fell over the cliff. And now the difficulty is trying to bring that back. How do you go about it?
Yeah.
I don't have all the answers. I just think that as a tourist destination, I think the tourists are actually being shortchanged, quite frankly, because I feel that with all the concessions that the government give to, these hoteliers and restaurateurs and developers and what have you, there's no one there of these heads of agreement to represent the music industry.
Right.
That's the problem. I never believe that the people who come here to do business don't want to play by the rules of the game. They just don't know what the rules are. You know what I mean? And you can't, in midstream, say, oh, incidentally, by the way, you see that room you got over there that seats 300 people? You need to put a band in there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It is true that you can't tell people how to spend their money. To me, that's too dictatorial, But I believe that you can encourage these people to employ more local musicians on a sustaining basis. You know what I mean? Now, today, and I come here several times a year, sometimes invited, sometimes, other reasons bring me here. And it seems to me, like I told Adrian and a couple of guys some time ago, today in this country, the musician needs to have 2 or 3 professions.
Yeah.
Because he damn sure ain't gonna make it on music. You could forget that. Not that he shouldn't. I don't think that enough is being done to encourage these people to employ musicians. In the 60s and early 70s, when I lived in Nassau, you went to work like a guy went to work in an office or something. We went to work from Sunday to Saturday.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the way it was. And not only that, it was like that for years, because this whole music and entertainment thing has always, to my mind anyway, my way of thinking, has always been a part of the tourist experience. And we allowed it to get away from us. You know what I mean? That's why people are complaining that there's nothing to do when they come here. You know what I mean? And they're not come. I mean, would you come here if you were a tourist and you wanted to go to an island destination?
No.
I don't think I will.
No.
Not at all. And personally, I feel that there ought to be the people that coming on those ships and those planes should hear the Bahamian music from the time that plane lands until it leaves, and the same thing with them ships that dock here at the harbor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And don't tell me it can't happen. Find money for everything else. It ain't that hard. Ain't no money. It ain't no money out of nobody's pocket, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No. And it is kind of frustrating. You know, I mean, I'm not a young man like you guys, okay? But I still got a number of years left, I think, to play.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that's what I want to do. That's really what I want to do.
Yeah.
I don't want to do anything else.
Yeah.
You know, if I want to drive a race car, I'd probably have one. You know, but that ain't what I want to do. You know.
I want to go back. I should have asked you this before, but I want to go back to your. I only know of one album. I think it's entitled "First Time Out." Or something like that. How did that?
Well, that came about because at the time there was a lady here who, claimed she was wealthy. I don't know how wealthy she was, but she claimed she was wealthy. Her name was Marion Gall, and she had bought a house near the Montague Beach Hotel, and I think on several of her visits there, she heard the groups, heard the Vince Martin group, but pardon me, no, sorry, that's not quite correct. She first heard me at the Drum Beat, I think it was, at the Drum Beat Club, when I was playing with Peanuts, because when I left the Cat and Fiddle in I left the Cat and Fiddle in 65, I think, 64 or 65, and I went to work at the Drum Beat Club, and that's where she heard me. And she was really taken by my playing, my personality, and whatever else I had at the time. And she thought that I should be recorded, you know, and she asked me if I was interested. I said, if you're paying for it, yeah, I am, you know. Okay. So anyway, that's really how that came about.
So on that was you, Dennis, Donaldson?
Yeah, Apple, and Bertie Lord. Yeah,
okay.
Bertie Lord Jr.
And
yeah.
You haven't recorded like a feature album.
No, not since that. However, I have played on probably, I don't know, maybe 20 albums, you know, with various groups.
Yeah.
You know, a flute or alto mostly. Yeah. The only tenor recording I think I can recall that I've done was with the Cat and Fiddle orchestra, you know, yeah.
Now, is there a preference for you between alto and tenor?
I'm often asked that question, and I generally answer it this way: whichever instrument I'm playing, that's my favorite at the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you know, the alto is the instrument that I started with, and if I had to actually narrow it down to a single instrument, a choice between the tenor and alto, it would probably be the alto. But I don't think about that a whole lot.
Right.
You know, I think, well, one of the advantages it always gave me is that whichever instrument I'm playing, I've learned that tune in two different keys. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's one of the advantages, you know. And there have been times, as a matter of fact, when I've been playing alto and I'm thinking tenor. You know, yeah. Oh yeah.
What's your setup?
At the moment, well, here's it. It's been this perpetual search, like for most professional musicians, and I say professional as opposed to student, because the student, that's why he's called a student. He's just learning, you know, through development, what works best for him. For the professional musician, there's a perpetual search to find the right mouthpiece. It's like with the golfer, wants to find the perfect putter. Even though he shot, 6 under par yesterday, if he shoots 1 over par today, it's the putter's fault. So he throws that away and he goes try to find another one. At the moment, I'm using a Meyer New Yorker, which is a limited edition alto mouthpiece from the Meyer Mouthpiece Company. This is a very old company. As a matter of fact, Cannonball Adderley played a Maya.
Oh yeah.
But believe it or not, I'm telling you now, I'll get to my mouthpiece. Cannonball actually played a Maya 5 opening
Oh yeah.
with a number 2 reed.
Wow.
And if I played into something like that, it sounded like I was blowing into tissue paper or playing a comb, right? For me, that's why, you see, the characteristics of the inside of your mouth and how your embouchures form basically determines what kind of sound you're going to get from the instrument.
Right.
That's why give the same instrument to 10 different people,
Right.
and 10 of them sound differently on it. It's the same alto sax, right? But at the moment I'm using a Maya New Yorker, which is a limited edition mouthpiece, with a, I'm using a, what is this? Bonad mouth ligature, right? And I'm using Lavar's medium reeds,
Oh yeah.
which is about a 2.5 to
Right.
3. Okay, that's what I'm using.
Okay.
I love the sound. The reason I change this mouthpiece from time to time is because, for whatever reason, maybe it needs to have some work done to it, I don't get the high notes as well as I do on some of the other mouthpieces that I have.
Okay.
Right now, I probably have about maybe 6 or 7 alto mouthpieces,
Right.
and I'm looking to buy number 8 and number 9, you know.
Well, that's
If not next month, the month after that, yeah. But I mean, I'm for playing generally, it has a good sound. I love the sound that comes from it. I mean, I'm willing to bet that about 70% of the alto players in the world today play some type of Maya mouthpiece.
Well,
It's an excellent mouthpiece.
well, the thing that hits me about your sound, it's the projection
Yeah.
right off the bat.
Yeah.
I mean, like the other night I pulled up to Sandy Court, way down to the parking lot,
Uh-huh.
and I could hear you,
Yeah.
and I know it's you.
Yeah.
And that was always a problem with me, and searching for the mouthpiece and trying to develop a better armature.
Right.
How is it? What are some of the things that you've done to kind of develop your sound?
Like I say, is a physiological difference that starts in here, on how the air comes out of your throat through the mouthpiece and reed into the neck pipe and into the instrument. You know, I have to tell you that I really haven't practiced this instrument as much as some people think or would like to think I do. I've practiced a lot, but when you look at guys like Charlie Parker and Coltrane, these guys practice like 15 hours a day. If they were playing hooky, they played 8 hours. Okay, this is how you have to play this instrument to develop it at any appreciable level. All the great players in the world, all the guys that you know by name, they didn't pick this instrument up and play it for half an hour and put it down, you know, then go do something else and come back. No, they lived with this.
Right.
And what I did with, like I said earlier, I lived with this instrument on my bed for several years. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't go to the movies. I didn't go to nightclub. I did nothing but play this horn. You know. Now, with respect to developing my sound, I think you have to hear the sound in your head first. You have to have some concept of what this thing should sound like. I didn't want to sound like Paul Desmond. I didn't want to sound like Earl Bostic necessarily. To me, the technique I heard first came from Parker. The sound I wanted came from Cannonball. And my whole life, I've tried to put blend the two of those together. Even today, I have no idea what I sound like.
No.
All I know is that I can play in a room and don't need a mic. As a matter of fact, quite often when I play in certain situations, I say, you know, don't give me a mic. I don't need a mic.
I'm a witness
You know,
to that.
right? Because no, my instrument does project,
Right.
but like I say, the way to do it for me. I think what helped me develop whatever sound it is that I have, however big it is, whatever, has to do a lot with playing long sustained tones, okay? That develops your armature as well, okay? And it also develops your tone. That's why when I teach, the little that I do, my emphasis is always on sound, okay? Because you don't need good technique to play well. And that's a misconception that some people have, that you gotta play fast to play good. That ain't true.
Right.
I mean, I can think of Stanley Torrentine, for instance, who has one of the most distinctive tenor sounds in the world, ever. I mean, I don't care where you are. If you hear 2 notes from that horn, you gotta know that's Torrentine. You know, that is if you're familiar with his sound. You know what I mean? A lot of other guys can fool you, you know, but Torrentine had that sound, you know, and some of the great players, I've had the opportunity to meet a number of them. As a matter of fact, I had a master class with Eric Alexander, right? And I asked him the same question you're asking me, who are your favorite tenor players? And he said, he started with Torrentine. Then he went to Coltrane and, you know, whoever else. But the thing is, the guys that really revolutionized this music, anybody playing today, no matter where they are, I don't care who they are, I don't care what name they have, were all influenced by those guys in the 50s and 60s, 40s, 50s, 60s. That's right. And, you know, that's just the way it is. You know, this instrument here that I'm playing now, I've had this for 37, how long I've had this? I bought this in 1971. That would be 38 years. I've had this instrument here for 38 years. Same, it's a Mark VI Selmer. I won't trade it for anything.
I understand you bought a Selmer that I had my eye on.
Oh yeah. I suppose I beat you to the deal, and it's probably because I wanted it more than you. Well, here's how that came about. I played it for about 10 minutes and realized it was just like an instrument that I sold many years ago. You see, the truth is that none of these instruments, no 2 of these instruments play the same. Believe it or not. It could be a Mark VI, it could be, it could have a spatula high F as well as a pearl high F, or whatever thing. But they don't all play the same, and naturally, I mean, depending on who's playing it. And but there are some musicians who will make any horn sound good. You see, your horn is your voice. You know, it's like you speaking. Only you sound like that. Anybody who wants to sound like you have to emulate you or imitate you, right? There you go. It's the same thing with these instruments. You know, I remember I read something recently. Extremely talented and one of the top-rated tenor players. His name is George Coleman. And you asked me about sound and how it projects, and I was trying to explain to you why no 2 people sound alike on the same instrument, you know. And he said he liked the Coltrane sound so much that he got the exact same horn, the exact same mouthpiece, the exact same reed, right, and could not sound like Train. That's right, couldn't sound like Train, you know. But like I say, I don't know. My sound seems to have quite a bit of appeal, particularly among musicians, local musicians who play this instrument. Not only local musicians. I've played in New York, I've played in Germany, I've played, you know, a number of places. And more often than not, the compliment comes to just like my playing, you know what I mean? And it always goes something like, you know, you really sound great, man. What a sound. You know, that's that kind of compliment. And even the guy that repairs his instrument for me, you know, he says, you know, where did you learn to play? And I tell him the same story I tell you, you know, and I just suppose some people it's incredible, but then it's like everything else. You know, if you hammer a nail long enough, no matter how long that nail is, eventually you're going to drive it through the wood, you know. Yeah.
Now, one of the things that always impressed me about you and the musicians that you've worked with Dennis Donaldson and Apple, you could call almost almost any tune,
Oh, yeah.
and especially Dennis,
Uh-huh.
and he on it.
Oh, yeah.
He's
Yeah.
got it, you know. How's it that, I mean, and he knows the keys and this and that.
Uh-huh.
How
Yeah.
do you learn tunes?
Well, the first thing I do with a tune, and that is true with Dennis, when I joined the Vince Martin quartet, I was playing tenor and flute at the time, and they were playing tunes that some of them totally unfamiliar with, some of them I was barely unfamiliar with, and a lot of them I knew, but had never played with anyone, you know. So what Dennis and I used to do, we used to prepare formats for the dining room, and they would play tunes like a medley of tunes, 3, 4, whatever. It got to the point where within the band, all we had to say was the Parisian medley, and I know what that meant, okay? And I don't have total recall, you know, but I've learned through the years to the value of memory, you know what I mean? And familiarization. And even when I started playing the cabaret shows, I knew that the show was going to run for a year, year and a half, whatever. Man, within the first 3 or 4 rehearsals, I knew the entire show. The entire show. And I don't know whether it's a gift, I don't know whether it's something I cultivated over a period of time, but when you do that type of work, you really have to be on your toes all the time, because anything can happen. You know what I mean? The trumpet player may forget a cue, the trombone player, or even one of the saxophones. So you have to know the entire show.
Yeah.
And sometimes it helps just to cue this guy in, or,
Yeah,
you know, or even play the part.
But more than
You know.
that, it's almost as if you know the ins and outs of the chord progressions.
Okay, I was about to get to that.
Okay.
The way I learn tunes is first of all, I try to learn the harmonic structure of the tune. Okay? And when I practice the tune, I go and try to learn the chord changes. You know, if it's a 32 bar tune, you see, in jazz, there are a lot of times when what you play in one tune, harmonically another tune or 10 other tunes can have the same harmonic structure. You know what I mean? So the same thing is applied. It's only when the tune goes like slightly to the right or slightly to the left or something that you're not accustomed to hearing, and you say, well, I got to shed this. You know, shed mean wood shedding. You know, right? And that's just an expression in the jazz musicians use, and it simply means practice, right? Yeah. And then what I do from there, I try to hear the tune played by other players. You know what I mean? And I like try to see what they're doing with it, and if there's any area of the tune where I'm weak or I'm not certain of, you know, this is what I will spend most of the time on. The other thing too is through the years you develop your ear, you know, to hear and anticipate, and I think that's an asset to any musician. And that's why when people say they play by ear, they do exactly that. They play what they hear. I know a musician who is a well-known saxophone player right here who doesn't even know what key he's playing in. Yeah. But you start playing, and he will follow you. Yeah. But you ask him to name the key, and he doesn't know what key. He doesn't know what it's F, E flat, A flat, whatever. I need to know that. Yeah. You see, because I need to know on which degree of the scale this tune starts. Right. You know what I mean? So whatever note it starts on in one particular key, it starts on that same note or degree of scale in every other key. Right. You know what I mean? So if a tune starts on the third, okay, whatever tune this is, whatever key you play it in, it's going to start on the third of that key. Right. If it starts on the fifth, it's the same thing. Right. I mean, you take Misty, it starts on the fifth degree of the scale. Right. It's an E flat concert, right? Mm-hmm. So on this instrument it'll be I'll be in C.
Right.
Right. So I know my first note is G.
Right.
You see?
All right.
So if I'm playing it in 3 sharps, my first note will be E.
Right.
You know. So I need to know this.
Yes.
Maybe some guys don't need to know it. You
Right,
know,
right,
but
right.
I need to know that. You know. And that's, I think, for me anyway, I'm speaking for me personally, not everybody else. It works for me, and that's why I don't have some of the problems that a lot of musicians, horn players, have in playing in certain keys.
Right.
You see? And that's the reason. I mean, one of the reasons anyway. There are musicians that I know who years and years and years I looked up to, and I realized that they couldn't play in certain keys, man. I know some of them came to me for lessons, and I found out, I said, oh, damn, well, okay. You know, but the thing is, I realized too that no matter who you are, no matter how good you are, how bad you are, you can only play as well as you're able to play.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of which, we have a couple of minutes. We could hear a little bit of the horn there.
Oh.
Amen. Ralph, thank you very much, man.
Was that it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, kid.
Thank you very much.